Welcome, everyone, to year 3 of Rupp Pfalzgraf's Empire State Entrepreneurs and New York Business Law podcast, a really fun and informative forum for us to showcase clients, strategic partners, and community leaders to talk about relevant issues for entrepreneurs and business owners throughout New York. Now, by now, I'm sure you know, my name is David Pfalzgraf, and I'm very fortunate to be the managing partner at Rupp Pfalzgraf, a full-service law firm headquartered right here in downtown Buffalo. And we're really, really lucky to be hosting this podcast in this super cool studio at Incept. I want to thank, as always, Mike DeVerne and Eric for allowing us to host our podcast in their studio. And we've really developed a meaningful strategic partnership with Incept. They're helping us with a ton of things at the firm these days, and they're really doing a bang-up job. So thanks, Mike and Eric, for all that you continue to do to support our law firm. Really excited today to host a couple of dear friends and partners of mine in the law firm, Matt Miller and Ben Burge. They're here today not to talk about law. Don't worry, we're not going to get too deep into M&A stuff and labor and employment stuff. We're happy to do that anytime for you if you need it. But today we're going to focus more on artificial intelligence and the impact of AI on our business and our profession, and some ways maybe in which you, as an entrepreneur or business owner, can rethink the way you're utilizing or leveraging AI. So we'll get fully immersed into AI in a minute, but before I do so, I wanted to welcome Matt, welcome Ben. Thanks, guys, for being here today.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
And I think it might be helpful to our listeners if each of you just take a minute to talk about your backgrounds a little bit and what's led you to your current roles at the firm today. So Matt, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, David. Well, born and raised right here in Western New York, in the South Towns. And after college, undergrad, I went into the real world for a little while. I worked a real job. So by the time I decided it was the career path of choice was to be a lawyer, I had already had some real life experience in the working world and was a little older than my classmates. I did a variety of things during law school, during my summers, did the big firm job. I worked in a public sector job as well, both in Boston, Massachusetts, went to law school in Pennsylvania. And although I had different aspirations to go to a bigger city in the mid-Atlantic, after law school, I ultimately, the gravitational pull back to Western New York.
100%. I get that.
I couldn't fend it off. So I landed back here and from day one have kind of grew up being a complex business litigator. Starting my career at a smaller firm before joining Rupp Pfalzgraf about 15 years ago and took on that role again. And over time, just kind of grew and my practice evolved into what it is now, which is the practice area leader of the Labor and Employment Group. And during that time, not only growing up as a person, as a business person, but also as kind of a strategic thought leader, figuring out not only how a law firm runs, but how a business runs and all that comes with that. So it's been a great journey, and I'm proud to be where I am.
That's awesome. How about you, Ben? Remind me again what landed you here.
Sure. I was hit by a different gravity than Matt. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, so I'm a proud Browns fan, which is painful in its own right. But when I was 18, I moved to New York City because when you're 18, what's better than living in New York? Went to undergrad there, met a Buffalo girl who eventually convinced me to come back here. Went to law school, practiced for a couple years in New York. And my first shop wasn't glamorous, so I've seen kind of the good, bad, and ugly of law from time to time. But moved back to Buffalo after I woke up on the 5th floor of my walk-up, wondering why I was still in New York City, paying through the nose for everything with bills. But been at the firm for 10, 11 years now, helping guys and girls buy and sell businesses, helping them run their businesses. And I really enjoy it because I get to pretend to be, a business owner and use those skills more than being a lawyer. Being a lawyer is great. Trust me, I have printouts here. We can talk about the law for days and days and days and all the nuances, especially as it relates to AI. But I like to view myself as a business owner. So a lot of my work now is kind of fractional general counsel type work. And I just really enjoy that because it certainly puts a different flavor and a different lens on how a lot of lawyers look at things. And I find that enjoyable on a day-to-day basis.
And we know our key topic today, this topic of artificial intelligence is Now, sort of old news in terms of it being a disruptor, not only in the legal profession, but I think for any business today. But I'm curious as to both of your perspectives, and maybe we'll start with Ben. But tell me about sort of early use of AI, or how and when you knew, Ben, that it could be utilized or leveraged for M&A purposes, or for, I know Ben is also the firm's general counsel, so he's fully immersed and in tune with issues that we face as a business, like many of our entrepreneur listeners. And so how do you get out ahead of it, Ben, or how did you know that this was going to be something that then required the firm to change pretty quick, and whether it was AI task force or AI practice groups or policies maybe, and I'm sure Matt can talk about a million different AI usage and related policies. But Ben, give me the early
Sure.
days of AI in your mind, and when you first knew that this was going to be something that needed to be embraced and not sort of resisted.
I'd love to say it was a thoughtful decision, but I stumbled into it, candidly, and give credit where credit's due. Tony Rupp, of Rupp Pfalzgraf, is a preeminent thought leader in AI, and he's been beating the drum for a long time. And I eventually, stumbled into it, maybe an early adopter in the firm, but certainly wasn't in the very vanguard of it. But this one story, I think, is really memorable to me. I was helping a physician practice with an ugly breakup from another physician group, and there were questions, and some of the contracts were messy. And I was out for a walk one morning because it was kind of the later stages of COVID, and you couldn't be in a gym or be too close to people. So I had ChatGPT on my phone, and there was this deep research button that I had never heard of before, and I think I probably hit it by accident. But there was a question of, okay, in my particular fact pattern, who owns the business records produced by a physician? Is it the physician practice, the physician who generates the records, the patient themselves?
That's a great question.
I have no idea. Still probably don't. But I accidentally hit the deep research button, and I went on this walk. And I came back, and all of a sudden I had a 25-page single-space memo written by AI with citations, with work product, right?
Incredible.
And so I looked at this and said, holy cow, this is revolutionary. Obviously, I didn't know about hallucinations at the time. In hindsight, I wish I probably would have fact-checked some of those citations. But it just really took the blinders off from me of saying, hey, this is a massive tool here. I could have generated this memo that it wrote for me, but it would have taken me and maybe a couple of younger associates a few days, if not more. And it did it in the 20 minutes I was out for a walk around the block.
And that's 4 years ago. Or
that was
three
or 4 years ago, right? And it's only accelerated from now. And I'm still probably a brute force user. I use a couple of different softwares now, and I still put a paragraph into ChatGPT or Claude and say, hey, let's try refining this paragraph to address buy side or sell side, depending where you are in a transaction, or what about this particular angle of it. So I'm still not necessarily a refined user with all sorts of back-end APIs and those things people throw around, and I nod knowingly, not really sure what they're talking about. But that was kind of my first introduction to AI, and it just really showed me how powerful a tool it can be. And now I'm using it half the day, every day, and I try to make sure all the associates and other partners in our group are using it at least that much, because it is a fantastic tool. It's not going to replace lawyers. It's not going to, right, at least not short term, right? At least not in my lifetime, probably. It's never going to replace having some independent judgment and the ability to look at something, but it's certainly going to speed up the drafting time. It's certainly going to be a very useful tool. And I think that's the main element that we can lean on now, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a business owner, whatever it is saying, okay, there's this new tool out there. Are you using it? And if not, why not?
How about you, Matt? Give us a little early perspective on AI and your embracing it, how and when and why, and what impact did it have early on?
Yeah, I think it goes back to something that Ben said too. I was sitting in one of those 5-minute intentional conversations with Tony Rupp in his office that quickly became an hour. And to his credit, he started talking about AI, and you can tell when Tony talks about something, the passion with which he speaks, that it's that important, or that it's that gravitating, it might be revolutionary. And so I immediately, it caught my attention. I paid attention for the full hour, and I went back and started playing around with some stuff. And right away I could see, even in that early stage, how this could potentially just make my job easier. Not replace me, not take over judgment and make decisions, but make things more efficient. lead me in the right direction when there's a difficult fact pattern or legal question. It just evolved over time. And in that short period of time from that conversation, what's transpired in the marketplace and even at our firm is really incredible. You could just look at what has come out from the two of the major players in the last few weeks with their newest models. I mean, they're literally writing themselves, testing themselves. And so how did we take that and intentionally decide that this is something that we as a firm and as a business need to pay attention to and need to take control over, because it's not going away, right? I remember the conversation with Tony. He said it to all of us, I think, over time, where he likens it back to like the invent of the BlackBerry phone, right? If you don't get on board and become invested and intentionally make strategic decisions with something that is that revolutionary, you're already way behind. And so that's what kind of drew me to it right away. Like, all right, well, we got to get on board with this. We got to understand what it means. We got to make sure our people understand what's out there, how it can be useful to them, the dangers and pitfalls to be aware of. And that way we can position our firm and hopefully our clients, if we're using it right, to be the best firm possible in the future. And so it's really transformed my day-to-day life, not only my law practice, but my day-to-day life. And I continue to see that that's only going to keep going, as we go on.
Let's talk for a minute about nuts and bolts. Both Matt and Ben serve on the firm's AI task force and our newly created AI practice group. Matt, maybe I'll start with you. From a policy perspective or from a implementation perspective, how can we help our business owner clients or the entrepreneur listener on this podcast? What should that executive be thinking about as he or she is running a company that undoubtedly has individuals who are utilizing AI for the company's benefit? But how has our little task force, how has our practice group started to think about practical advice that can be given to a business owner client for AI usage?
Yeah, it's a multi-pronged approach in my mind. Compliance is the big word, right? Everyone wants to be compliant with whatever rules, regulations, statutes apply to your particular industry or business. And so number one is partnering with the right lawyer, right professionals to make sure that you are checking all those boxes and staying compliant, staying ethical, and making responsible choices. But beyond that, once you have decisions made at the top level, the highest of an organization, one of the biggest things in my mind is identify where your best people are doing like the lowest level work. Where, like, if you want to create return on investment, identify where those opportunities are, where you can automate, you can use AI to automate, mindless tasks that your normally really productive people are still doing, and they probably shouldn't be. So you can create value almost instantaneously if you're making intentional strategic decisions, you're identifying where those opportunities are, and then making choices with the information you have at hand and the tools that you have that might best perform according to those opportunities, so you can materialize those, you can capitalize on them. That's one of the biggest things. And then, once you identify what those are, you got to get adoption from your workforce, and across the board, right? It's not just select people, I don't think, in my mind, which means you have to understand the tools themselves. What are their capabilities? What are their pitfalls? Then you have to be able to explain what those tools are to your people. You got to train them, you got to educate them. And only once you understand and you can educate and train your people are you ever going to get them to adopt it and be able to use it efficiently and effectively the way it's designed to do.
I like, you said it's got to be done as part of a strategy. Yeah. So it's not just like an IT tool or a shiny internal program that can be used. I mean, both of you guys think, and maybe Ben, you can speak to this, but AI, it's got to be part of a strategic plan for a business or a company.
Absolutely. I give a couple of client examples, and I tell them walk the same journey Rupp Pfalzgraf walked, but just in our footsteps. We were a little bit of early adopter in the vanguard of using AI. And in the very beginning, we probably didn't have our arms wrapped around which AIs we're using, who's using which version, how much are they using, and all those things. So, it was IT just because they did it, but we conducted an internal survey of just trying to figure out what our users were using. And then had people that actually were in the know. So again, the Tony Rupp, the IT department say, okay, let's develop a strategy now that we have that data. Which versions are our people using? Which of these are best for our particular application? You want a law firm, so maybe a version that's better at drafting versus if you're making widgets, whatever a widget factory makes, which tools might be better for you, and having an intentional strategy along those lines. And then the other thing, being lawyers, we're always risk adverse, right? People are always a little bit afraid. So then taking that, let me rephrase that to our guys on the outside, taking the results of that survey and saying, okay, how do we actually employ this correctly? Do we need to have any confidentiality provisions? Do we need maybe an enterprise account with that provider? So if we do have client data, whether you're a physician practice, again, using personal health information, whether you're a law firm with personal identifying information or whatever it might be, can you have a more secure account so some of those concerns are being addressed? And again, that's the journey even our firm took. So we now have enterprise accounts with multiple providers that gives us the exact same level of security and confidentiality that our standard document management software has. And so I feel like that knowledge will help a lot of clients have a better understanding and comfort level with using these tools, and then saying, okay, now that I'm set up, how do I actually start employing them? And that's the exciting part of this, is like the foundation, the strategy part of saying, okay, how do we build a baseline here, and then growing from there. That requires a little bit of thoughtful thought from the actual users.
And on that note, Ben, I know that's not just a bunch of lawyers running around using ChatGPT, and I think this might be this could illustrate for listeners or other business owners who are thinking about the investment that it might take to develop a strategy for AI, implementation and use. But can you give our listeners a sense of the infrastructure that we as a business or company have sort of built around to try to develop and then implement a strategy?
So sure. I mean, it starts with just taking that survey, taking the results of asking the question, what services or softwares are your users using? And I think in our particular application, we had a number, and then reviewing those, analyzing those, seeing what's the pros and cons of each one of those services are, and then making a thoughtful decision based on your industry. Do you need drafting support? Again, this is a tool, not a replacement. Do you need manufacturing support? Do you need maybe math support if you're an accounting firm? Which one of these tools provides those services, and doing that thoughtfully. And then once you're setting up an account and have the account enterprise or otherwise set up, making sure your users are adopting it, making sure your users are going through the right account to keep that confidentiality and all the other obligations there, but then just keeping up with the education. Having again, to use our example, we started having weekly breakfast sessions every Friday in our firm where, we would talk about different uses, different applications of AI. And, Tony Rupp would lead a breakfast session about whatever version he was using. I led one about prompting, because it's amazing how much better a result you can get from a thoughtful prompt, and just trying to make sure everyone out there is using this and exercising their thoughtful muscles when they're trying to use these tools versus just throwing information in and seeing what happens, because that's where you start getting shotgun answers because you're putting a shotgun approach in. And that's not very strategic. So making sure that in addition to adoption, in addition to doing the foundational security elements, you're educating your people on how to use it correctly so that they can actually get some useful results.
And the individuals, it's lawyer driven. There's IT support, but I also would love to know both of your perspectives. Maybe Matt, yours on sort of like engineer support, or does every business, is it going above and beyond to think that maybe you need other third parties that are not directly involved in your manufacturing company or professional services firm? Or how did the two of you, as sort of leaders of this task force and practice group, think about what other people might be necessary in order to give us the best shot at implementation or success?
Yeah, I mean, it all started with being intentional in forming this AI task force and getting people from all levels of the firm in the same room to meet regularly with effectively what were brainstorming sessions to ask the right probing questions about where we could identify needs. And eventually that evolved into a thought process that, look, well, there's lots of big ticket third-party products and platforms that are out there that have incredible capabilities, and we could buy up licenses and have those platforms, as many of them as we want, available to us to do what we initially thought it could do for us and for our clients. But that conversation evolved over time, and opportunities presented themselves. Well, look, we can use the basic technology that ChatGPT, for example, uses, but we can customize it to ourselves. We can create, if we have the right people, opportunities to even greater streamline, to greater automate without the elimination of employees. Simple tasks that are available or that are necessary at our firm, whether it's in accounting, whether it's something to make a paralegal's job more efficient and make them more valuable with their time, whether it's something to do an analysis of some company's records, right? To ultimately give you a summary, and then you can take it from there. We identified that as an opportunity that was available to us to do something different. Going back to when you and Tony founded the firm, I mean, you guys founded this firm to think differently, to practice law in a way that most law firms never would try, right? And so it was kind of emblematic of that thought process, that mantra that, all right, look, if we're going to do this, let's go all in, right? Let's be intentional. Let's be strategic. Let's invest in ourselves and be able to create tools by employing people who have a similar mindset, but have the skill set to be able to do that, and take requests from our lawyers, from our paralegals, from our COO to create proprietary softwares and programs in-house that can then help us be more efficient and effective and ultimately deliver that to our clients. So it was a big jump. It was a big leap to go as a law firm out in the marketplace and hire data engineers, multiple of them, not just one. And I think so far it's working with flying colors. It's been outstanding. It's great to have them as a resource. They're in every AI task force meeting. They're available to talk about if you have an idea for something, to come and explain it to them. Their brains might work a little differently than ours do. And those conversations are awesome. They're super rewarding. And then to see it come to fruition after a few weeks of coding and working with it really is incredible. I can't wait to see what's next.
Tell me, has that transformative investment in people that have, sort of experience with, software, implementation and development, and like, where does the ROI come in, or where does the client get to see value or change in the traditional approach to the practice of law? So I'm sure we've got a million clients listening as well, saying this is all well and good, but how does this investment that the firm is making in AI translate into fill in the blank service value for a client? But are we far enough along in the process to know the outcome, the output for our clients or clients in general?
I think you have to invest in it and just have some faith in it, Dave. I'm going to repeat a phrase that you use all the time, just when speaking to the firm, right? What's the highest and best use of your time? So I think maybe we don't have a direct proportional ROI yet, but we are trying to find the highest and best use of every single employee's time, whether it's the managing partner down to the receptionist or the file room clerk. Are there processes that you do on a day-to-day basis that can be automated, or can be automated at least in part? We've had a couple of document request softwares that have come up through these brainstorming sessions, as Matt's talking about, whether it's subpoena generation, whether it's document request generation. And what they do is they let people that are either on non-billable tasks or on flat fee tasks all of a sudden become more efficient. So that is a higher and better use of their time because they now 100%. Have more time. So I think it's a little bit of a tough question to answer. Everyone always wants ROIs, right? I've got some private equity clients. They always talk, I've got, so this 3-year horizon, 5-year horizon. And I think that's not necessarily the best way to look at this. It's saying, how are we making our processes more efficient? Are we freeing up, employee X or employee Y to be an even better employee versus, do we have a 2% higher margin? Because I don't really know how you would measure that if it's someone that's not already capturing their time. So we as a firm have made the intentional choice to really invest in that and take the conscious decision that, hey, maybe there isn't a direct measurable ROI here, but maybe it's measured through higher productivity, maybe it's measured through higher gross revenue from that, whether it's a practice group specific or the firm at large. And I think those dividends are going to start paying off in the future. And right now we're still in the investment stage.
Tell me, as you both of you are in the prime stages of your career, obviously, and have fully embraced AI to make you and the firm, by extension, more efficient. But if you think about 5 years from now, what does a professional services firm look like? Are we going to scale down because of the efficiencies that you're helping to create, or how do you both think about looking into the future and what a law firm, an accounting firm, or another similar type company might look as far as its infrastructure?
It's a little scary, right? Like I didn't see
I'm
this.
really scared.
I didn't see this
gone.
coming 5 years ago, right? And so, but here we are. And so, one way that we're hoping to address what it is going to look like in 5 years is by doing what we started doing 2, 3, 4 years ago, and why we're doing what we're doing today. So do I think it's going to replace lawyers and law firms? No, not in 5 years. It's just going to change continually, and it's going to continue to evolve the way that we do our jobs, the way that we deliver services to our clients. And that's not unique to law firms. This is businesses across the landscape, right? And so I keep hearkening back to the intentional strategic decision that we made, because diving in headfirst to a pool of AI without really understanding what it is and what it can do for your business, or any business really, and applying it without kind of planning out or hoping to have a certain path of development and a certain output or outcome it can be dangerous, right? Because if you don't have the right processes, the right protocols, the right checks and balances in place when you apply to AI, you can scale your business, but you also scale any problems that can come along with it. Like you can create unintended consequences if you're not intentional and careful about it. Lawyers are typically, probably one of the least risky professions that are out there, but I don't necessarily see AI as a risk. Are there risks that come with it, with the AI itself? Sure, but they can all be addressed if done carefully. And so in 5 years from now, I think the legal profession is going to continue to change. I think judges and courts are going to become more open-minded to the use of AI in legal drafting. You see these crazy decisions that come out, every couple months about a lawyer submitting something when they haven't checked the citations that come out with the AI. But I think it is going to change dramatically. It has in just the last few years. It does literally by the day. I mean, so if you stick your head in the sand and think it's not going to dramatically affect your business, whatever industry you might be in, over the next 5 years, then I think you need to look in the mirror and maybe think about it some more.
And I would just couch that with, technology's been coming for lawyers and professional services firms for generations, right? First it was computers, right? That's mind-boggling. Tony Rupp tells stories of his first job as a law firm, didn't have a computer on his desk. It goes back to a story my father tells me. My father ran a professional services firm. His people fought him on buying computers in the first place. And then all of a sudden emails, and then automated Westlaw, automated Lexis. Everything's been coming for every professional services firm for years. And so it's just evolving like we've done 10 times already. And you either have to evolve or die, though. So if you're going to stick your head in the sand and not at least investigate this, not figure out a strategic plan for yourself, there might be some dire consequences, whether it's a headcount reduction or otherwise. But it's an exciting opportunity here, just like emails and online Westlaw research should have been exciting at some point in time for young lawyers. And I think that's the kind of the spirit and mentality of our firm of saying, great, there's some new challenge for us. Let's go conquer it. Versus, woe is me. What are we going to do now? My ROI is going down.
Do you both think that as far as recruiting, whether it's in professional services firms or businesses in general, that the profile of sort of this next gen of lawyer, of accountant, of banker, of business executive will look very different based on what the two of you may think are skills that you're going to want to see in that next gen? And if so, what will you be looking for when you're out there, meeting with law students or, support staffers that you think might be able to help us in the future?
Yeah, I think, at least for me personally, I think both Matt and I had a little bit of work experience before I went to law school. I only worked for 1 year. Matt worked for a little bit longer. But I feel like that's going to be something that will actually be even more attractive than it already is right now, because it demonstrates that individual has a little bit more thoughtfulness, that they're not just on a K to 12 and keep going program. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of brilliant lawyers haven't left the academic career before they start practicing. But I do think a little bit of real world experience, a little bit of thoughtfulness, and hey, I want to go back to law school and do something with my degree, would show, at least to me, that hey, this person can think, right? AI can generate the documents for him, but does this person have some level of judgment, some level of independency here that maybe would make them a more attractive candidate than someone who hasn't had that opportunity?
Yeah, and look, it's scary. As somebody who practices labor and employment law, I'm seeing this with clients on a day-to-day basis, but I'm seeing it in my personal life. Like our kids who are in middle school or early in high school, this is available to them. The conversation has to start early. It's a different generation. It's a different economy. It's a different generation of people that are growing up through their young lives and developing, whether it's middle school, high school, the way that they think, the way they speak, the way they write. And so you got to be thoughtful about questions you're asking people in interviews, writing samples that you're reading, or the way you're evaluating applicants for positions. Depending on the size of a company, there are many third-party tools and companies that they use AI to automatically screen applicants. It's a big to-do in the labor and employment world. But sitting down with somebody and looking them in the eye, there's a lot of nonverbal communication. There's a lot you can observe about somebody and evaluate other than just something that's written on the page or an email they write you. And so, look, going back, I think it's going to be drastically different. With every passing year, our class of lawyers is a little bit different. They've learned in a different way. They've developed in a different way than we have. And even, 7-10 years from now, when my kid's entering the workforce, it's going to be drastically different than it is today. So I do think it's going to be a different class of young professionals growing up, no matter the industry they go into. And we'll see how that changes.
Sort of as we begin to wind down here, 2 or 3 practical pieces of advice for our listeners. You guys are, for 3 years, have been fully immersed in this, and I think are armed and empowered to know what has worked, what has not worked. A lot of tests, a lot of failures, a lot of successes. But if you're a business owner and you're running a small business here in Western New York, what are 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 pieces of practical advice that you think those individuals should be thinking about?
I'd say, at least for right now, I'll give one and then I'll let Matt, AI can give you an answer, at least today, right? AI can give you an answer. It can't give you accountability. And I don't mean to your lawyer, I mean to your controller, right? To whatever role it is who's using AI. Does the person who generated that output understand what it is? Are they doing it thoughtfully? Are hallucinations or otherwise, but garbage in, garbage out. You need to make sure that you're not just looking for words on a paper to tick a box, but actually understanding what those words mean, both for the particular question and for your business at large. Like that's one piece of advice I would have. Sorry to jump in on you, Matt.
No, not at all. I love that. And for me, it's kind of like prompt engineering. So that's a buzzword, buzz phrase, but it's as good as what you put into it. So be thoughtful and be intentional about the way that you put prompts into AI, no matter what platform it is that you're using. Think through, not only with the output in mind, but think through the words that you use, the phrasing that you use. Give it everything. It will digest it. It will decipher what's most important. And the more you give it, not just in one prompt, like literal conversations over a period of time, over and over and over again, that is where my greatest investment, I think, has shown the best results, because learning how to properly prompt an AI tool has really improved my ability to be the most efficient with my time. That's that's one of the biggest things to me.
And just to piggyback off that, have a conversation with ChatGPT. I realize you're talking to a box, but just read the output it generates. If it's wrong, tell it it's wrong. I have this all the time. I'm sure some of my conversations would be would be fun to read. I yell at it, but like this, you're missing the point of this prompt. Going back to Matt's point, that's probably a bad prompt on my part, but having the conversation, the back and forth with it as a tool. Right? Really refine the output you're trying to generate, understand the output you're trying to generate. And, maybe it takes 3, 4, 10 incantations of that to actually get it correct, but don't just take the first output as gospel. Actually look at it. Make this a tool that's useful for you, not just a tool that, moves the ball seemingly forward.
That's 100%. Great. That's great. Well, look, I'll let you guys go in a sec here, but I can't let you go without. I always play a little game of little-known facts about my guests, and I could start with some little-known facts. You're both, great athletes in college, high school and college, and both have 2 amazing children. But give our listeners something else besides those little-known facts. Matt, maybe I'll start with you.
Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing.
On the spot too. That's the tough part.
I once
Thanks for the heads up.
This is a funny one, and this is the first one that came to mind because I tell the story all the time. But I once drove my Jeep into Lake Erie for 13 hours and kept the engine running. It's not a wise decision on my part back in the day, many years ago, but something that I remembered. So
I love it. That's a good one, actually.
A little known fact about me. I'm the proud B flight champion at the Country Club of Buffalo golf tournament. I don't know if that's necessarily a fun fact or not.
I know you've got some great lineage in your family, Ben. Your mom might be a leader.
Oh, yeah, that's that. Dave, thanks for that prompt. That's a little more embarrassing. So I'm the proud son of the president of the Poodle Club of America. One of my pro bono clients, and I can guarantee you none of them are listening, but that's all right. There's only about 200 members to be in the Poodle Club of America. You have to have shown and finished 5 champion dogs. My parents had a entrant who didn't do well, unfortunately, this year, in the big dog show in New York. So they went, it's a great, God bless my mother, she's very into dogs.
Amazing.
So I grew up with anywhere from about 7 to 15 dogs in the house.
Amazing.
Miniature poodles, which was fun.
Well, look, guys, I can't begin to thank you enough. I know you got a ton of stuff going on. Personally and professionally, and so to spend an hour with me is so appreciated. So thanks again. Look forward to seeing you back at the office soon.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Dave.